Coming up on this episode of Game, the frigate turns off the lights and goes dungeon crawling in one of this year's most punishing adventures. We hit up the internet for what we think are the best online treats you can get. And we get an inside look at the inner workings of this year's hottest aerial assault. All that coming up in the next half an hour. This is Game. What's up, gamers, and a very warm welcome to yet another episode of Asia's favorite show, all about the best in the world of video games. I'm Kelly, and if you've got a video game itch that needs some attending, well, call me Miss Scratch-A-Lot. Aw man, wrong shirt. Well, lots to get through on this episode, so let's get it on. Now, when it comes to punishment, no video game did it better than 2009's Demon's Souls, a game famous for dishing out the pain. Let's see what the frigate thought of its successor. Here's the review of Dark Souls.
Hey, Fraggy here, back in the gaming den. Now, if I look a little bit tired, it's cause for the last week or so, I've been busy inching my way through Dark Souls, the spiritual successor to 2009's Demon's Souls, and also one of the more challenging video games that I've played in a while. Now, if you haven't yet tried the first game, Dark Souls is a brutal third-person action RPG set in a decaying and inhospitable world filled with legions of beasts and monsters. But unlike other similarly themed dungeon crawlers, a lot of the reason this game and its predecessors stand out is for its sheer difficulty. And when I say it's challenging, I really mean it, because one quick look at the back of the box and you'll notice the words "Prepare to Die" written quite clearly on the backside. In fact, aside from the title, it's the only other thing in big print. Definitely not a game for the faint-hearted. The story in Dark Souls tells of a curse that has been placed upon the world, turning all those who die into walking undead hollows. But as legend has it, a chosen member of the undead will be selected to rid the world of this affliction. But not before going through some of the most creatively designed enemies this side of console gaming. Now, I know some of you hardcore gamers are already itching to check this one out, so battle axe is at the ready. Let's see what else the world of Dark Souls has in store. Now, we've already spoken about the difficulty, but I think one of the reasons I love this game is not just because it's punishingly hard, but that it manages to straddle that magic wire-thin line between absolute frustration and sheer gaming bliss, something that's pretty rare in this generation of video games. You see, the magic about Dark Souls is that even though the game is pretty cruel in its difficulty, it's almost never unfair. And if you find yourself dead, there's a good chance that it was probably your fault for overextending your abilities or just being careless. If you played Demon's Souls, you'll be right at home with the combat system, which relies heavily on planning and countering, as well as learning the various different attack patterns of the game's enemies. Every action you make drains your green fatigue meter, whether it's blocking an attack, swinging your sword, or even rolling around. Drain the meter and you're pretty much left defenseless, which makes the art of combat so much more of an involved process than just mashing a button. Another big strength is how this game expertly blends both action and role-playing in equal parts. You start the game off as one of 10 different character classes, but once you get into the meat of the game, It's really your choice as to how you want to play. Will you go long range with a bow, or up close with a little two-handed broadsword? Or maybe even engage in a little sorcery? It's all up to you. And when it comes to boss battles, I swear they must be putting something in the water over in Japan, because some of the bosses in this game are downright genius. And when you're done throwing your controllers, it's nice to just admire how creatively designed they are. Just don't stand there admiring for too long, because trust me, these guys will kick your ass. And finally, I love the online components of this game, which offer a brief bit of comfort in this otherwise lonely world. A nice reminder that you're not alone in your suffering. Players can leave hints warning others of danger, and at certain points, you can even summon other players into your world to help with a particularly difficult fight, which is something I loved from Demon's Souls, and I'm definitely glad to see this in the sequel. Now, one thing I did find annoying was that even though Dark Souls is a beautiful game in its own twisted way, it does seem like this game is pushing this generation's console hardware to its absolute limits. Now, in certain sections, the frame rate can dip pretty severely, which can affect your timing. And when a game is so punishing, these instances can really get you frustrated, especially if you end up dying and losing up to 2 hours of progress. Also, while I like that they've pretty much copied the combat system from Demon's Souls, they've also copied all the glitches from the targeting system, especially if you're attacking from above. You know, in the end though, it's actually quite hard to pinpoint what exactly Dark Souls has going for it that makes this game a must-play experience for any hardcore gamer who thinks he's worth his salt. It's one of those rare experiences that makes you sit up and pay attention, as bit by bit you learn a little from each death and struggle to make it just that teeny bit further. It's a throwback to the ways video games used to be, because when it comes to many of today's games, the question is not really if you'll ever finish it, but just when you'll finish it. I mean, when's the last time you finished a game like Contra without cheating? And Dark Souls, I find, is exactly like that. You learn by dying and you get better, which is the way it should be. Sure, there are few games as frustrating, but I think the more important point is that there are even fewer games which are as memorable. Dark Souls, definitely one of the best video games that I've played in years.
Death became my friend. The first time I died, but dying gets easier. It's how you die that leaves your mark.
A little bit of pleasure and a mountain of pain. Well, the best things in life are never easy. Now, while Fraggy goes and spends some time gluing back his broken controllers, it's time for us to take a quick break. But don't even think about touching that remote, because when game returns, we're going online, unearthing precious free-to-plays, the ultimate bang for your buck. And we get the lowdown on the top titles available at a friendly game store near you. Then, thanks for joining me, your hostess with the mostest. Now back to work. Time now for that segment where we check in with the best ways to maximize that internet connection of yours. Need a quick break at work? Or why not try some of our flashy delectables? This is Online.
First up in this week's treasure trove of online ornaments, time to get knee-deep in the Dead with an old-time fan favorite. id Software's Doom is now available right from your browser. Yep, that's right, the game which pretty much introduced the world to 3D gaming has just been converted to a Flash game. And there's no easier way to send the undead demons back to hell, even while on your coffee break. Built with no mouse support, just like the original, it's time to wind back the clock to the years when words like 16-bit actually meant something. So if you're up for a bit of nostalgia, or you just want a schooling in the ways of games gone past, give this one a whirl at the address below. Next up, keeping in line with the old school vibe, time for some Greek mythology. In The First Hero, your job is to help our friendly protagonist through various levels of mind-boggling puzzles, all which are designed to test his mental mettle. A simple think-and-click puzzler at its core, a big reason this game stands out is for its authentic period art style, which does wonders for setting the scene. Solving the initial puzzles will see the gods bless you and present you with weapons. And as you move along, the brain benders just get harder and harder. A culture shot guaranteed to give that noggin of yours a workout. Be the first hero at the address below. And finally, to round up this week's edition of Online, we check in with a clever little game all about the sometimes unpleasant world of pest control. In Verminator, as the name suggests, your job is to get rid of the pesky population of furry rats hiding in the house. Now the trick to this one is to use one of several different kinds of cheese to lure the rats into traps or drive them away. Plan your strategy, drop the cheese, and set your devious plan in motion, because if you can't get rid of them, no one can. So if you think you're up for the task of rodent relocation, give us a hand and do your part by following the link below.
A pretty cool feat getting Doom to run in your browser, a classic in every sense of the word. Man, that sure brought back some memories. Well, time now to shift our focus to some of the top titles released this week, making sure that you don't end up with a dud when you next visit the shops. From daylight robbery to zombies en masse, this is the wrap.
Stealing its way onto this edition of The Wrap, it's bombs away as we check in with a newly released cooperative shooter, all about the dangerous world of organized crime. Putting you in the role of a hardened criminal looking to make it big, Payday the Heist offers gamers the chance to embark on a spectacular crime tour as they work together to make it out with the loot. Inspired by Hollywood, this action-packed shooter comes with 6 missions, including a downtown bank robbery, a moonlit infiltration, and even some armored car hijacking, all built around a system which allows for endless replayability. With a heavy emphasis on co-op, this title plays a lot like Valve's Left 4 Dead, as players work together guarding key positions and cracking through various security measures, all the while fending off waves of law enforcement agents. Available for both PC and PS3 as a digital download, The Heist is on sale at less than half the price of a regular game. Good news for those that don't want to break the bank while breaking the bank. Moving on from one budget price title to another, if you like the intense zombie slashing escapades of Chuck Green, listen up, because Capcom have just released a spin-off of their cult favorite. Off the Record is a reimagination of Dead Rising 2, and it comes with new missions, environments, and even weapons, as well as an assortment of tweaks to improve performance. In addition, If you didn't like the fact that Dead Rising 2 was built around a time limit, Off the Record now comes with an all-new sandbox mode, allowing gamers to fully explore Fortune City without worrying about the clock. A cut-priced release with more than enough zombie smashing to tide the fans over until Part 3 gets announced. Dead Rising 2 Off the Record is available for both the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 right now. And finally, to close out this edition of The Wrap, a title that was supposed to have shipped this week but somehow missed the boat, the sequel to 2007's The Darkness. Featuring an all-new game mechanic called quad wielding, which allows Jackie to interact with his surroundings all while laying into the bad guys with fistfuls of lead. This second outing also features an all-new cell shading art style, looking a little like it was ripped straight out of the pages of a comic book. Now, as you'll notice, making a return is the trademark violence, as you use the environment to make quick work of your enemies. Now, it's a pity that you'll have to wait a little, but with so many great titles to get through before The Darkness 2 eventually gets released in February, let's hope they spit shine this bad boy till it gleams quality.
Awesome action from some killer titles right there. Now I'm especially looking forward to trying out the sequel to The Darkness. Even the cute ones have a dark side sometimes. Alrighty, time for us to take a quick break, but stay with us because coming right up, it's a look into our no way cliched gaming crystal ball as we predict what you'll be playing in the coming months. And we look at some of the steps the developers of the all-new Ace Combat are taking to make this year's sequel one for the ages. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the show. Time now to check out what's going on in the gaming world to prep ourselves so we know which titles to spend our pocket money on in the next few months. So let's kick back and relax as we check in with the preview.
Focus, look at me. How many fingers am I holding up? He's fine.
Up front in this week's look ahead to the titles soon available at a store near you, we sink our teeth into the latest title of a franchise which needs no introduction. Aliens Colonial Marines is an upcoming first-person shooter drawing inspiration from the classic Alien films, as we follow a bunch of Marines sent on a mission to investigate an abandoned spaceship on a search of a few missing men.
Perimeter with every bullet, every blade, and hold fast.
What the hell was the line? Now, bringing hell down on this party is the local alien population, who aren't the friendliest bunch, to say the least. A fast-paced and intense action game which combines elements of classic first-person shooters and tactical combat. Search for cover among the remains of a deserted space station or through the corridors of a military stronghold on the verge of being overrun. So if you like what you see, look out for Aliens Colonial Marines sometime next year. Next up, one for the MMO fans as we check in with the latest online role-playing game from our friends over at Perfect World. Raiders is the latest MMO RPG in a long list of titles from the American publisher. And even though the general art style may look similar to some of their other offerings, what's unique about this game is just how many ways there are to customize your character. with a skill tree which allows for almost unlimited branching possibilities. Work your way through hordes of monsters as you work together with your team to accomplish the impossible. Featuring some great graphics thanks to the Unreal 3 engine, this free-to-play title is set to hit our shores sometime in the first quarter of 2012. And finally, closing out this edition of the preview, time to shift our focus to a game that PC gamers have been eagerly awaiting since it was first announced back in 2008. These are the latest shots from Blizzard's Diablo 3. Having defended the land from the armies of the Burning Hells, Sanctuary's warriors are driven mad, and it's left up to a new generation of heroes to keep peace and protect the land. With familiar settings like the town of Tristram, which should be familiar to fans of the series, we can't wait to get our hands on this title, but Blizzard are still being rather hush-hush about a release date, and all we know is that D3 is due out in the first quarter of 2012.
I stand alone, and if they keep coming, I will never stop killing.
Ripley would be proud. Aliens Colonial Marines looks to be a return to form for the franchise. Plus, with what looks to be an awesome multiplayer component, can't wait to get online and kick some alien butt. Okay, so next up, game developers know that making a great game today takes much more than just graphics and gameplay. In this day and age, when games are often emotional, cinematic experiences, the story and writing also play a huge part in making the pixels come alive. Offering us an inside look at the often unsung heroes who write the stories behind your favorite games, let's take a look inside Ace Combat: Assault Horizon.
I got an email from an American producer for Namco Bandai, and he asked if I'd be interested in helping, basically as a story consultant, coming up with a story on a new game. I didn't know what the game was, and he wouldn't say. He called me, I called him. We started talking a lot about game philosophy, kind of became friends, kind of bonded a little bit, but he still wouldn't tell me what the game was. I'm like, I don't know. Finally, I said, all right, if you want me interested, what is the game? He said Ace Combat. I said, you should have told me that right in the beginning. I'm in. We spent a lot of time talking about how games tell stories. And one of the things that we emphasize is that everything that you do in a game, whether it's working a controller, hitting a button, as well as reading what's on the screen or listening to what's happening, that is all involved in the narrative. That is all telling a story.
Hey, Colonel, you awake? I've got to scramble.
Yeah, coming.
Probably the most obvious difference between Assault Horizon and the earlier versions of Ace Combat is that we are now playing in a realistic universe. Everything that happens in the game is something that could happen in the real world. You start in Africa, and basically what's happened is the Americans are joining other countries, and you're working with pilots from France, from Russia, and from some other NATO and Western countries. As the story goes on, we find out that the rebels are getting support from some other group. The outside group is developing a weapon. The fight then moves to the Middle East and to Dubai. And we then, without giving too much of the story away, shift a lot of the action to Russia. What we wanted to do here was come up with a plot that would take us to a lot of different territories, put us in a lot of different geographical situations. For instance, there's at one point you are flying through Dubai, and you get to fly air combat through the buildings, which was one of the goals in coming up with the game. I did actually want to blow up my house, but the team thought that would be a little bit too much. You have several characters that you can play as in the game. Probably the most important will be Colonel Bishop. Early on in the process, I actually watched a movie with Bruce Willis. I'm not sure that a lot of people will have watched Tears of the Sun, but it's a fantastic movie. And I saw Bruce Willis's character, and I said, man, that has got to be the main character of this story. Once I had that character, once I knew that kind of stoic hero, the guy that is at the top of his game, I understood what could happen in the story, and I kind of took that and went from there.
We have additional information about some of the key people involved in the coup. The airman leading the coup Air Force is the same one we encountered in Africa.
Very early on in the game, Colonel Bishop and the player will realize that even though all of his life and all of his career, he has been the best, suddenly he's confronted with the reality that maybe he's not the best. Later on in the game, he and the player are going to have to make a choice. Do I accomplish my mission and prove that I'm the best, or do I save my friend? I know what I would do, and yet that may or may not be what most players will do. Everything that you see will be absolutely as realistic as we can possibly make it in the game. So that, again, it's another core value of the Ace Combat series has been realistic aircraft. Well, now it's a realistic political situation, realistic geography, and realistic people.
Well, guys, that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Game. Now, remember, if you want to watch the best bits once more, then head on to our website at espnstar.com/game. Or you can chat with us or any other game enthusiasts at facebook.com/ESSGame. And to get hold of those ever-important links, follow us on Twitter at ESSGame. We'll see you guys next week for more game goodness. Bye-bye.